This is the Longbox Review comic book podcast. I am your host, Eric. Welcome to the show. Today's episode is another pull list review for comics that I read in February 2024, which numbered 57. And I'm just going to jump right into those. Again, these are just going to be quick thoughts about these comics that I read, mostly quick thoughts. With a bit of a spotlight on some of the independent books. But I will be starting off with a DC comic, the Sandman Universe Special, Thessaly, number 1, I guess. I saw this on the DCU app, and I recall liking Thessaly from the Vertigo Sandman series. And when I saw this was just a one-shot, I decided to read it. I should have known better because this is, I guess, a tie-in to Nightmare Country and or Dead Boy Detectives, or maybe the latter is part of this. I don't know. But I felt like I was reading half the story or, some aspect of the overall story. Despite that, I enjoy the interaction between Thessaly and the character of Madison, who enters into Thessaly's orbit, and Thessaly makes some sort of connection with her and starts to show her the ropes, or at least offers her that opportunity, which Madison takes her up on. But it begged the question for me if Madison would go on to play a larger role in the overall story. I wouldn't mind a whole mini with these two characters, actually, to see where Madison and Thessaly go from here. And maybe that is explored more in whatever Vertigo Sandman thing, or Sandman universe, I should say, story that was going on, which I have not read. Anyway, besides that, it was interesting to see Maria Lovett on a DC property, and I thought she brought a Vertigo style to the comic, an old Vertigo style. So that was nice to see. Next up is a couple Marvel comics, History of the Marvel Universe, numbers 5 and 6. I have been reading along with the coverage that Al and Peter have been doing on the Resurrections and Adam Warlock and Thanos podcast. But I decided to read ahead and finish that trade collection, mostly just to get it off my desk. But I am very much looking forward to their continued coverage of this series, and I also quite enjoyed these two issues. Well, the whole collection was noteworthy because of the Javier Rodriguez's art. And this is not the only time I'm going to mention Rodriguez's art in this particular episode. More Marvel comics that I read, Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man issues 29, 30, and 31. I discussed issues 29 and 30 and the general resolution to the story that occurred in issue 31 in my Comics History January-February 1979 episode. So if you're interested in hearing more about those particular, or at least those two issues and a little bit of 31, you can go listen to that. Next is a comic from Vault Comics. It's called Beyond Real. It was a number 1 issue by Tony Fajula, Fabiana Mascolo, Zach Kaplan, Jordi Belair, and Hassan Otsman-Elhau, with a cover by John Pearson. A really good cover. I like that one. This was a free issue in my comic book order because Vault Comics has been pushing a few books in this way recently. And I talked about one of those I believe, in the January pull list review episode. This is the overall description of the book. When struggling artist June is injured in a severe car accident that leaves her boyfriend in a coma, she begins to experience strange visual phenomena. Soon she's able to see that we are all actually living in a computer simulation. June must set out on a journey of possibility and peril into the metaphysical layers of the simulation to reach the world's creator and save her true love from death. I quite enjoyed the previous free offering, Unnatural Order. That's the one I referred to earlier. And while I enjoyed this free issue as well, especially the different art styles on display, I didn't feel like I needed to continue with this Matrix-like story. But I don't know. I'll keep an eye on it, though, because the idea intrigues me, and I like the art in it. All right, back to DC for a while. Batman, Superman, World's Finest, number 23. The lackluster Return to Kingdom Come story continues in this issue, but it did have a couple things going for it. One, Batman theorizes that Gog possesses the anti-life equation, and two, that cliffhanger ending with Darkseid showing up to claim it. Otherwise, I've just been, I don't know, it's just, for something that is supposedly a Return to Kingdom Come, it's more flash than substance for me. So it's like, well, here's another chapter in that story. So I'm actually looking forward to this storyline resolving and moving on to the next thing. However, Nightwing 110 is something I quite enjoyed. Oh my gosh, I was so looking forward to the story the cover suggested, which is Nightwing warning Damian, Cat Damian, to knock off, there's a snow globe off the shelf, and Cat Damian doing it anyway, similar to the internet meme. And thanks to my buddy Travis, when we were discussing this issue just the other day, he pointed out that it is that cat meme that I had seen before. I just, for some reason, didn't connect the two things. But I knew that it looked familiar to me in some way. I just couldn't place it. So I thanks Travis for pointing me in the right direction. Anyway, but what I got instead of what the story that the cover suggested was a brotherly love style story where Nightwing teams up with John Kent Superman to rescue Damian from a beast fight ring. And this is the kind of tie-in that I like. It's a story about the lead character, Nightwing, that makes sense as to why he's involved, in this case, the Beast World event. Besides that, we get some fun elements, namely a bear called Gale the Slayer. And if you know anything about Gail Simone and her association with bears on social media, this was really funny. Another aspect is Damian trying to scratch Superman, like in cartoon cat style. Like so Superman's holding him at arm's length, and Damian keeps trying to scratch him, and it's just I don't know. I find that kind of stuff funny. And then finally, the inclusion of a new character called Apex Ava, apparently introduced in the previous issue, and I just missed it or don't recall, or it was a quick cameo type introduction. But this is where we really get to see her flexing her might, if you will. And she ends up with the powers of somehow the beast spore, if that's the correct term that they're using for the beast world situation. She is able to control the people that have been turned into beasts, which includes Damian. And as revealed at the end of the issue, she is able to turn into the animals she has tattooed on herself, sort of like an upscaled tattooed man. And so basically, Apex Ava, she's a hunter, and then any of these fantastic beasts, or I should say, fantastic implies some sort of magic to them or whatnot. But these apex predator type animals, she then, when she kills them, she tattoos them on her body, and so that's somehow that allows her to then turn into those animals when she touches those tattoos. Anyway, she warns Nightwing at the end that she looks forward to hunting him someday. And so now I'm wondering, will we see her appear in the upcoming Fallen Grayson arc, or will this be like a one-off new villain that someone else will have to pick up the gauntlet on, or will she just disappear into obscurity? Next up is a series that I have decided to cut ties with. This is Titans, number 7. As I said, my final issue. I posted this a bit on social media, but despite the fact that this is my last issue, I've not been happy with the previous 6 issues. But this issue actually kind of almost had me turned around a bit, because I love that Nightwing was turned into a fox as part of that Beast World event. And when I saw that in the issue, I chuckled, thinking to myself, of course he is. Of course Nightwing's a fox in this, right? And then like a page or two later, Wally comments about that very fact that of course Nightwing is turned into a fox, and he is a cute fox, I have to say. So, but despite that, that is the last issue of Titans, and I don't even feel compelled to keep up on it digitally on the DCU app. So it was not my cup of tea for those characters anyway. So back to Batman Superman is next, World's Finest Annual 2024. This was a hodgepodge collection of shorts within the, I guess, World's Finest milieu, if you will. The most interesting thing in this annual, which includes a prelude to the next big story in the series, and a spotlight on Metamorpho and Bumblebee, respectively, was the Challengers of the Unknown story by Jorge Fornes and Christopher Cantwell. And if DC announced this series tomorrow, I would be buying it because it was great. I love the way Fornes draws the characters. I liked Cantwell's take on the characters and the personalities that he and Fornes gave to them. This is the Challengers. Well, this should be the new planetary of the DCU, and definitely not the version of the team I just read at the time of this recording in Outsiders #3. That to me is a travesty to the idea of the Challengers of the Unknown, those characters that appeared in that Outsiders issue. Ugh. So yeah, I would definitely pre-order this series, probably even get it in single issues and not wait for the trade. I don't know, but I really enjoyed that, and I hope to see that come back in some fashion, maybe after those horrible other Challengers get lost somewhere. Next up is another bunch of stories, the Trinity special. I ordered this forgetting that these were backup stories in this Sampere King's Wonder Woman series that's going on right now, with various artists that were doing those. However, I still love the Sampere cover and adore the character of Trinity as she's been presented in these stories. And so just her being so comfortable in her role as Wonder Woman's daughter, whatever that turns out to be in the future, we'll find that out. And being a sister to Damian Batman and John Superman, and how they also are dealing with Trinity as a toddler, as a young girl, as a teenager, through these stories. It was just adorable. And I'm actually, even though I had read most of them before I got the Trinity special, I actually haven't. I'm glad that I have that issue in my collection now. All right, I'm going to turn away from DC, just a slight turn away from DC, with the Ghost Machine special. Given the announcement that about the Ghost Machine publishing initiative, I was curious what they'd be offering. I have the Geiger trade, the first Geiger trade to read, because it was a new creator-owned thing written by Jeff Johns, so I wanted to check it out, but I have not read it yet. But so then when they announced this initiative, I wanted to see what else they have. And out of those previews in this this one shot, only the Redcoat one piqued my interest. He's an immortal in the 18th century, and the comic is drawn by Brian Hitch. So those are two checkboxes that are that click for me. So I'll be getting the trade when that comes out, assuming it does. Again, like I said, short turn away from DC, back to DC for a couple. Alan Scott Green Lantern #4. We get the secret origin of the Red Lantern, which frankly I thought I'd read in the JSA book first, and maybe that was intended, but just that series has been coming out kind of slow. Anyway, I'm glad it's here because of what we find out of the character and his connection to Alan Scott. I like this complicated, messy, and messed up, as we find out, relationship that Alan and Vlad, a.k.a. Johnny, his lover in the past, have. Vlad, the Red Lantern, is killing Alan's former lovers. We found out in the first few issues, or at least it's revealed that it's him here, or maybe it was the last issue. Anyway, after all, but there's more to it given each other's connection to the red and green flames of power. I have to say, overall, this series has been surprisingly good. I did not expect that I would like it as much as I have. And I've been buying it. I think I said this last time, but I've been buying it in singles because I wanted to support a miniseries of my favorite Green Lantern. Kian Tormey, the artist, has been phenomenal, and the I forget now who's doing the color artist, and I don't have that issue nearby to look it up, and I didn't write it in my notes. So, but the whole thing and the writing has just been spot on for this story. So I'm really curious how this miniseries will impact the character going forward. And we still have a couple issues to go. And next up is just a random comic I somehow found on the DCU app. It's one of the Superman Plus issues from, was it 90 in the 90s? Anyway, Superman Plus, the Legion of Superheroes. And, it was from 1996. This features the Reboot Legion, which is something I'm not actually well read on. It was an odd special in that if you want to endear the readers to these somewhat new versions of the Legion characters, and I don't know. No, wait. So 0 Hour occurred in, I think, 94. And so these are relatively new versions of the Legion characters. Yeah, and that's where I was going with this was, maybe don't show them annoying Superman so much. That was an interesting take. It did make me interested though in reading the Reboot Legion stories, specifically for the characters of Gates and Cosmic Boy's and Santa Girl's relationship. They are a pairing, which I already knew. I knew that, and I knew of Gates, but I haven't read a whole lot of Gates, and this is probably the first time where I actually got to see him. No, actually that's not true. Probably Legion of Three Worlds is. I read some stuff with him, but anyway, I felt he was an interesting character based on this one Superman Plus issue. And of course, just, the other changes from the Legion that I know. Although I'm not, and again, in Legion of Three Worlds, I read this characterization. I'm not enamored with the loud-mouthed arrogance of Brainiac 5 in the Reboot Legion. So considering that he's my favorite Legionnaire, I have a feeling I'm going to be very irritated reading that volume of Legion. Back to an independent book, Somna, a bedtime story, issue number 2. So this did not come out in issue number 1 did not come out in January. It came out, I believe, in December. So every other month. So I didn't get a chance to talk about Somna number 1. But generally, when I saw that Becky Cloonan and Tula Lotay were teaming up to do this book, I didn't care what the story was or how much the issues from Distillery were. I just knew I was going to buy and enjoy them. That's how much faith I have in these creators. And I certainly have with this. I've read issue 3. I'll be talking about that later. But generally, just so you know, just in case you missed this one, it's a story about a woman living in colonial America during the time of the witch trials. And she starts dreaming about or is being visited by or both a supernatural presence. It's left up to you to interpret a little bit. And so Becky Cloonan draws the waking world parts, and Lotay the dream parts. It's also the story is also about sexuality in an oppressed society and the powerlessness of women in an American patriarchal culture. In this issue, in issue number 2, Ingrid struggles with the visitor who asks her to give in to him, it, whatever it is. While this is going on, one of the men in town is found murdered, and then Ingrid's husband, who is a witch finder or witch sheriff, or I'm not exactly sure what his title is, but he's involved with finding witches and bringing them to trial. Returns home. He returns home to find his wife, I'll just say, in a compromising position. Both of the artists, Cloonan and Lotay, do so well in their respective areas. Cloonan with the dark and dreary existence Ingrid experiences during the day, which she does so well. I would love to see her do more stuff. And of course, the heightened Technicolor world of dreams by Lotay, which is just exquisite. actually, I have in my notes here when I wrote this. Now I have to decide if I want to order the hardcover, and I just did. As at the time of this recording, just yesterday, late last night, I actually did order the hardcover for this. So I was like, do I really need the issues? Anyway, we'll see. Let's see. Back to DC. All American Comics number 16. This is one of the facsimile issues that I bought recently. Of course, I bought it for the Alan Scott Green Lantern debut, and I read the rest of the issue. However, unlike when I talked about Detective Comics 27, that facsimile, where I enjoyed a few different stories in there, the only other story besides the Green Lantern origin that I somewhat liked, and I mean that somewhat liked, was the Gary Concord, the Ultraman story by Don Shelby. And it involved fish apes, or they really look like chimpanzees, but anyway, it was not great. But it was, for a science fiction type comic book character, it was okay. Next up is the Forever Maps from Scout Comics. This is by Todor Ristov and Michael Lagas. I kept seeing this book in previews for a few months and kept putting it on my list to buy, and then I took it off because I had too many things on, and then finally I pulled the trigger after, 2 or 3 times, because the idea of maps leading to other maps and how that impacts the character and the people in his immediate circle, their lives, intrigued me. This is the general description for it. In 1794, a young man named John is given a map. Curious, he follows it, and when he arrives at the end, he finds a similar map. This leads him to another, and then another, and on and on. Determined to find anything else, he continues to follow these strange maps all over the country. Decades later, he learns that as long as he follows them, he doesn't seem to get older, nor does he have to eat, for that matter, or sleep, I think. And it's not until nearly a century later that he realizes when he stops, time begins to catch up with him. Torn between family and immortality, John must continually choose between living forever and having a life worth living. So that sounds pretty cool, right? And I have to say the Ristov art is pretty good and conveys some of that emotionality. There's a focus on crows or ravens, I'm not sure which, throughout the book, but that's not really explained. Regardless, I would have liked a bit more of that internal conflict that is implied by that description, or a bit more of the magic behind the maps, what that meant and why, what was going on. Just a little, flesh out a little bit more of the character and the world itself. And I realized, I know that's not the point, but at the same time, the promise of John choosing between living forever or having a life worth living, that story really only dips its toes into those ideas, and not sufficiently for my taste. So, I mean, it was a nice distraction, but it wasn't a real powerful bit of storytelling like I hoped it would be. And I realized too that this is the third 18th century book or setting that appears in this pull list review. So that's interesting. Just occurred to me. Back to DC, the Low Low Woods, issues 1 through 6. This is part of the Joe Hill line from a few years ago. I read this because I was reminded recently that writer Carmen Maria Machado, who wrote the Fantastic in the Dream House memoir, which I talked about in a recent Gutters episode, I think the stage and screen catch-up. Anyway, also wrote this horror miniseries, like I said, in the Joe Hill line. What started out as a mystery for the characters of Elle and Octavia unfolds in how the town's history has its ties to misogyny in that town, in that area. It turns into a battle against the evil that infects them and the other women in the town, that's a great concept. There's some great visuals by Danny and Bonvillain. And I'm thinking specifically of the Sinking Women panels. So if that little bit intrigued you, I highly encourage you, especially if you have the DCU app, you have no excuse, go read the Low Low Woods. Whereas the Forever Maps left me wanting, this did not. It's so good. I want more comic books written by Machado. I would love to see that. I'm going back to Marvel for a few issues here, or a few titles here. Starting with Fantastic Four issues 1 through 13. Speaking of using a digital comics app to its fullest, I've been hearing how good this new volume of Fantastic Four has been, and I finally dove in. Much like what happened with Christopher Cantwell's Iron Man series from last year. I started reading this series, and I couldn't put it down. I kept reading and was reading nothing else until I got caught up on the Fantastic Four. Writer North and artists Coelho, Fiorelli, and Abertov, I think, are crafting an interesting take on Marvel's First Family, where they experience some interesting sci-fi type adventures or science adventures. And in issue 13 in particular, it was delightful in the unique way that Doctor Doom defeated the FF, at least temporarily. And I will leave that to you to discover, because it's probably the most interesting, unique way of Doom showing his prowess, I guess, especially up against Reed and the other members of the Fantastic Four. So, yeah, pretty good. Speaking of Fantastic Four, then I read the Invisible Woman miniseries, issues 1 through 5. Sue Storm, which is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four, and one of my favorite characters of the Marvel Universe, presented as a sometimes secret agent, was not the story description I would have ever guessed for her, or character background for her. I quite enjoyed this, but it felt like that it was two distinct ideas that were kind of sandwiched together, like, Sue Storm and a spy. What? They're sandwiched together in a good way. So, there's that. It was written by Mark Waid, so I that doesn't surprise me. Of course, I am assuming that Sue, as a spy, hasn't appeared before, and I'm just ignorant of it. So, if you know about this, and I'm just, like I said, ignorant of it, please let me know, because I'd like to go back and read those other issues if indeed those exist. I also read Captain Marvel 29. This is the issue where Captain Marvel gains his cosmic awareness and changes from silver to blonde hair. Generally it was very wordy, but there were some great visuals in it. But not, nothing really. It's one stepping stone along the way for this character that I'm reading in the complete collection digitally. And in that collection, the next issue presented is Marvel feature number 12, which features the characters of Thing and Iron Man teaming up. It involves Thanos, which is why I suppose it's included here in the placement after issue 29 in the collection. And I assume it will have some impact on an upcoming issue of Captain Marvel, but I didn't really see anything that that was interesting in the issue, especially in relation to Captain Marvel himself. So it was just like, here's another stepping stone in the next thing that's coming. So have to get back to that. Speaking of going back to DC, Batman Killing Time, number 1 through 6. The premise of this, when I first read about it, didn't excite me, which is why I did not buy it. I decided to wait to read it on the app. But it's a Tom King book, and I always find something interesting about his stories. And like with Fantastic Four, once I started, I just kept going until I was done with those issues, didn't read anything else. I will say I did not catch on that the narrator in the first few issues, of the series, I should say, wasn't Batman until issue 2 or 3, which I think was the idea. And then it became about who was this, who was telling the story. And I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that, well, not really, but because I never really try to figure out the mysteries, because I like to discover them along with the characters in the story. So I don't think too hard about that kind of stuff. Regardless, I did not figure out who it was, But afterwards, I was like, oh, well, that totally makes sense. I should have guessed it. But anyway, that was a nice distraction. It definitely was not as good as the Tom King written Batman run that he did. That was, I thought, really good. Speaking of Tom King, next up is Wonder Woman number 5. I loved this issue. I think I'm loving just about every issue. I love the last one, which was about the young boy who was dying. But this is also a different kind of love for this. As the King of America recruits Wonder Woman's rogues in the story, the Wonder Girls spar with Diana in trials of their choosing. But it's Diana's goal to win each of these trials and prevent them from entering the coming battle because she wants to protect them. Yara and Diana shoot arrows at each other, and Diana wins. Cassie and Diana arm wrestle, and Diana wins. Donna, knowing that Diana excels at physical challenges, chooses an Injustice-like video game where they spar as Batman and Superman, with Donna being Batman and Diana being Superman in the game. Despite initially being unfamiliar with the controller and the game itself, Diana wins. Anyway, the result of which all 3 Wonder Girls are shown to vowing not to interfere with the coming fight. However, later, after Diana arrives at her apartment, all of the girls are there. And despite their vows, they tell Diana, no, thank you. We're going to help anyway. So I can't wait to see all of these Wonder folk, these Wonder Women, come together and take on the forces of the King of America. From one superhero woman to another, Spider-Woman number 5. This is another Javier Rodriguez love fest. I had started buying this volume of Wonder Woman, and I forget the volume number, 4 maybe? I don't know. But I stopped after 4 issues because I got bored with it. Anyway, then I found out kind of recently, so I got bored with it, and then issue 5 is the start of basically a new arc, and that's when they introduced that new Spider-Woman costume where she's wearing the goggles and the jacket and all that. And I will say I didn't like it. I think that classic costume is awesome. However, what I didn't realize then was that Javier Rodriguez was the artist on those on that issue number 5, on this issue 5. And I wasn't familiar with his work then, and once I found out that he was the artist on that series, starting with 5, I started reading it. Basically, this issue, Spider-Woman, sporting a new look and attitude, runs into the Porcupine, I believe that's his name, robbing a bank, and ends up helping him by the end, under the watchful eye of Ben Urich, who has been gently pushing Spider-Woman towards, I guess, helping towards something. I'm not sure yet. So I'm just getting started reading those. This isn't Rodriguez as he is in Defenders Beyond or even History of the Marvel Universe, but you can see some of those qualities that he exhibits in those comic titles here, and maybe this is where he started doing it. So it's interesting to have read a bunch of stuff by an artist later in their career and then go back to something earlier. I think these are Spider-Woman was earlier anyway, to see how he progressed. So I can't wait to discover that. Another fantastic superhero woman, Power Girl. This is Power Girl Uncovered. Was a one shot. So this is they did a couple of these, or they've done a couple of these so far. DC has, where they're releasing these one shots that feature great covers of the run of that character. Not sure why they're doing this now, but I don't mind because I read it on the app. I was curious, what were the covers? Why would someone buy this? The actual printed version? But yeah, I like the idea of them collecting these variant covers. I think they're mostly variant covers. For those of us who may want them but can't get them or afford them, for that matter. They could do this with so many characters. So in other words, I hope they keep doing this. especially for characters that I like or for artists' work that I like. Anyway, I really appreciated that they also added a narrative element to this issue. So it wasn't just, page turn after page turn was just cover after cover. So I thought that was kind of neat, even though it was just like, there's no stakes to this. It's just a way to lead you through and provide a little bit of fun, I guess, for Power Girl. All right. And then finally, the last set of books that I read, this is also an independent book, Bylines and Blood, issues 1 through 4. This is from Aftershock Comics, and it's by Neke, I believe, Erica Schultz, Van Jensen, and Cardinal Ray. And this is the description for it. The very concept of truth has died, politicians invent their own facts, and independent newspapers no longer exist. Sounds familiar? In this world, private detectives serve as Ronin, searching out the hard truths that people are desperate to keep hidden. The best of these is Satya, known as Lady Dick, a former journalist turned gumshoe who runs every lead to ground. But Satya has just received her hardest case yet. Her old editor has been murdered. Someone wanted him silenced, and the trail points toward the highest bastions of power. Don't they always in these stories? To find justice for her friend, she'll have to put everything and everyone she knows at risk. Although her parents to some degree, but I don't know. I didn't really feel like that there was a whole lot of risk in this story. Anyway, I wanted to read what I thought was a meditation on our post-truth society. And that's really just the background for this miniseries. It's really about that murder, that specific murder mystery. Presented as a neo-noir murder mystery. And while I like the lead character of Satya, I would have preferred more about that nature of truth and whatnot. But I guess that's a different comic book that I didn't get to read. However, I will say artist Neke does a good job telling the story, and I especially love their coloring in this. Satya, I believe it's yellow. Is it purple and yellow or yellow and blue? I forget now. But she's always wearing one or both of those colors in her outfit. So and she's very striking against that neo noir dark look that they're going for. So I appreciated that especially. All right, that is all I have for the books that I read in February 2024. Let me know if you have any comments or questions for me. You can send email to longboxreview@gmail.com. I'm on social media at longboxreview, or you can leave comments at the website longboxreview.com. And with that, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.